The city lights were cold and sharp that night. Tall towers of glass rose into the sky, glowing with strange alien colors. Among the crowds that hurried through the streets, one figure stood apart. She was a young alien girl, her skin pale and marked with faint silver lines that shimmered under the lights. Her eyes were deep and tired, carrying a sadness far older than her age. She walked slowly, her feet dragging as if each step was heavy with shame. Her clothes were torn, dust covering the edges of her robe. Her hands trembled as she reached out, knocking gently on the door of a small shop. For a moment, she waited. The sound of movement came from inside. The door opened, and warm light spilled onto her face. The girl bowed her head low. Her voice shook. "Please, just a little food. Just one place to rest." The shopkeeper looked at her with wide eyes. His face changed from pity to fear. Without a word, he slammed the door shut. The sound echoed in the street like a hammer on iron. The girl flinched but did not cry. She had heard this sound too many times. Still, she moved on. The street grew darker as she walked. The wind howled between the buildings, carrying whispers of gossip. People saw her passing and pulled their children close. Some whispered, others spat on the ground, as if her very shadow brought bad luck. She came to another door, this time a family home. She knocked. A small boy peeked out from behind the curtain, his eyes bright with innocence. For a second, hope warmed her heart, but then the boy's mother rushed forward, grabbed him, and pulled him away. The curtain snapped shut. A second later, the door banged closed, locking her out once more. The girl pressed her forehead against the cold door and whispered softly, "Why? Why does no one want me?" But the night gave no answer. She kept walking. Her legs felt weak, as if they might give out at any moment. Hunger gnawed at her stomach. Her lips were dry and her throat ached for water. Yet even in her weakness, her steps carried a strange strength. She was not ready to fall, not yet. At last she reached the edge of the market district. Bright lights shone from stalls filled with fruit, bread, and steaming pots of food. The smell made her dizzy with longing. She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on a small loaf of bread lying on the counter. "Please," she begged the vendor. "I can work, I can clean. Just give me something to eat." The vendor froze. His hands shook as if she were a ghost. Then, with trembling lips, he shouted, "Get away! Get out! You bring danger with you!" He pushed the bread aside and pulled down the cover of his stall. The other vendors around him did the same, their stalls closing one after another like a line of falling dominoes. Within seconds, the market was dark and silent. Only she remained, standing alone in the empty street. Her heart sank. She understood now. No matter where she went, no matter how kindly she begged, the answer would always be the same. Every door was closed. Every voice was against her. Every hand was ready to push her away. The night grew colder. Her body shook. She sank to her knees in the middle of the street. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had promised herself long ago that she would not cry again. Her lips moved, and a whisper slipped out, quiet, broken, and full of hidden meaning. "Take my body instead." The words hung in the air, carried by the wind, as if they were not meant for anyone, yet meant for everyone at once. A figure stood at the corner of the street, half hidden in the shadows. He was a human man, poor and ragged, his clothes old and patched. He had watched her from a distance, seen every door close in her face, heard every cruel word thrown at her. Now he tilted his head, confusion on his face. What had she meant by those words? Why would a girl so young, so fragile, whisper something so strange, so heavy with sorrow? The man's heart tightened. He felt a pull inside him, a question he could not push away. Who was she? Why was everyone afraid of her? And what did she mean when she whispered, "Take my body instead"? The girl lifted her head slightly, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She did not know she was being watched. She thought she was utterly alone. But the man in the shadows knew better, and though he did not yet understand, he felt that this night, this girl, and those words would change his life forever. The wind carried her whisper again through the empty street, soft as a prayer, sharp as a blade. "Take my body instead." And in that moment, the city, with all its closed doors and cruel voices, seemed to pause, as if waiting for what would happen next. The man in the shadows had watched long enough. His name was Joran. He was not rich, not powerful, and not important in the eyes of the city. He lived in broken places, sleeping under bridges, in old storage rooms, and sometimes in the back alleys no one dared to clean. People rarely noticed him. He was invisible to the world, a ghost among the living, but tonight he noticed her. He had seen her knock on doors. He had seen every door slam in her face. He had seen her sink to her knees in the empty market, whispering words that made his blood run cold. Take my body instead. What did those words mean? Why would she say something like that? Joran pressed himself against the wall, hidden in the dark, his breath shallow. He knew she was not like the others. Her silver-marked skin glowed faintly under the streetlights. Her eyes, too large and too deep for any human, carried pain that felt ancient. Yet she looked so young, so fragile, as if the world had already broken her. The girl tried to rise again. Her knees shook and her arms trembled, but she forced herself back to her feet. Joran saw her take a step forward, and then another, even though her body looked ready to fall. She would not give up. That stirred something inside him. For years, Joran had been forgotten by everyone. No one gave him a chance. No one opened their doors for him either. He knew the sting of rejection, though not as deep as hers. Watching her, he felt the ache of his own life echo inside her struggle. He followed, quiet as a shadow. The girl walked until the streets grew emptier. Her steps carried her to the edge of the city's old quarter, where broken lamps flickered and the air smelled of rust. Here, fewer people passed by. Here, silence pressed in from every side. At last, she stopped near an old stone wall and leaned against it, gasping for breath. Joran stood across the street, hidden behind a pile of crates, his eyes fixed on her. He told himself to leave her alone. She was not his problem. She was dangerous. He could feel it in the way others feared her. But his feet would not move. The girl's voice broke the silence. "Why won't anyone help me?" she whispered, her words carried on the night air. "Am I so cursed that even mercy is denied to me?" Joran's heart clenched. He had spoken words like that to himself on nights when hunger bit at his belly, when cold seeped into his bones. But he had never spoken them aloud. He had been too proud, too bitter. Hearing her say it out loud was like hearing his own hidden pain given voice. He swallowed hard. He stepped forward. His boots scraped against the stone, and the girl turned sharply, her eyes glowing faintly as they locked onto his. For a long moment, neither spoke. Joran raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said in a low voice. Her gaze remained sharp, suspicious. "Then why are you following me?" Joran opened his mouth, then closed it again. He didn't know the answer himself. At last, he said, because no one else would." The girl blinked. Her lips parted as if she had not expected such words. For the first time, her expression softened, though only slightly. "What is your name?" she asked. "Joran," he said. "And yours?" She hesitated. "They call me Selai." The name hung in the air, soft yet heavy, as though it carried a story too deep for her to explain. Silence stretched between them, then Joran asked the question that burned in his chest. "Why do you say those words? Take my body instead. What does it mean?" Selai's shoulders tensed. She turned her face away, her silver marks glowing brighter in the dark. For a long time she did not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, heavy with shame. "It means I was born with a debt," she said, "one that cannot be paid with coin or work. My family made a promise before I was even alive, and when I came into this world, the promise was placed on me." Joran frowned. "A promise of what?" Selai's lips trembled. "Of myself. My body belongs to them, not to me. They will come for me, and when they do, no door will protect me. No one dares to stand in their way. That is why every door shuts. That is why I am alone." Joran felt his stomach twist. Her words were simple, yet heavy, each one carrying the weight of chains he could not see. He stared at her, this fragile girl cursed before her life had even begun. He wanted to tell her to run. He wanted to tell her to fight. But looking at her shaking frame, he realized she had been running her whole life and fighting battles no one else could see. Something inside him stirred again, the part of him that remembered hunger, loneliness, rejection. But this was more than pity. This was anger. Anger at a world that would close its doors to a girl who had done nothing wrong. He clenched his fists. "Selai," he said firmly, surprising even himself with the strength in his voice. "I don't care who they are. No one should live like this." Her eyes widened. She stared at him as if he were a strange creature she had never seen before. "You don't understand. If you help me, you'll suffer too. They will come for you. They always come." Joran's lips curved into a bitter smile. "They can come. I've had nothing for so long, there's nothing left for them to take, but maybe I can give something instead." Selai shook her head. "You are a fool." "Maybe," Joran said softly, "but I'd rather be a fool who stood with someone than a coward who turned away." For the first time, Selai's eyes filled with tears, not of weakness, but of shock. In her whole life, no one had ever said such words to her. Above them, the city lights flickered. The wind howled through the empty street, and far in the distance, a low hum began to rise, like the sound of ships breaking through the clouds. Salai froze. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They've found me." The night sky trembled with the low hum of ships. The sound grew louder, filling the streets with unease. Salai's face turned pale, the silver lines on her skin glowing brighter as if warning of danger. "They're here," she whispered. Joran felt a chill run down his spine. He had lived in fear before, fear of hunger, fear of cold, fear of being beaten in alleys. But this was different. This fear had weight. It pressed down like a hand on his chest. "Who are they?" he asked quickly. Salai's voice shook. "The collectors. They come to claim what was promised. They do not stop. They do not forgive. And they never leave empty-handed." Joran's fists clenched. He looked around the dark street. The lamps flickered. Shadows grew long. The hum grew closer, like a predator circling its prey. Salai pressed her back against the wall. "I cannot fight them," she said. "I cannot even run. If they see me, it is over." Joran's eyes narrowed. "You've been running all your life. Maybe it's time to do something else." Salai turned to him, her gaze sharp. "You don't understand. You cannot save me. No one can." Her words stung him. Yet behind the sharpness of her tone, Joran heard something else. Despair. She had already buried hope long ago. The sound of boots echoed through the street, heavy, measured, too many. Joran pulled Salai by the arm, dragging her into a narrow alley. They crouched behind broken crates, the shadows hiding them. Salai trembled, but Joran held her wrist tightly, grounding her. 3 figures walked into the street. They were tall, armored in dark metal that shimmered under the lights. Their helmets glowed with red lines, and their voices echoed like machines. "She is near," one said. "Her mark glows. We will find her," said another. Salai squeezed her eyes shut. Her skin's silver lines pulsed faintly. She tried to dim them with sheer will, but they continued to glow, betraying her fear. Joran leaned close and whispered, "What do they want from you? What is this debt?" She swallowed hard, her voice barely a breath. "Long ago, before I was born, my family made a bargain. They asked for protection, wealth, and power. The collectors gave it, but the price was set. When the first daughter of our line was born, her body would belong to them. Her life would not be her own." Her voice cracked. "I am that daughter." Joran stared at her, his mind racing. He had lived among liars and thieves, but this was something darker. To sell your own child before her first breath, his stomach twisted with anger. "Your family, they gave you away before you even lived?" he asked. Salai nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "They called it duty. They said sacrifice was necessary for survival, but they lied. It was never sacrifice. It was betrayal." Joran felt heat rise in his chest. The collectors moved closer, scanning the street with strange devices. Every second they lingered in the alley felt heavier. "Listen," Joran whispered. "You're not theirs. You're not anyone's property." Salai shook her head violently. "You don't understand. I am. My name is already written in their records. To them, I am not a person. I am payment." Her words cut him, sharp as glass, yet something inside him refused to accept them. "No," he said firmly. "You are Salai. I see you. You are more than some cursed promise. You're not payment. You're not a debt. You're a life, and no one, no matter who they are, gets to decide that for you." Her eyes widened, as if his words struck a part of her heart she had buried long ago. The collectors paused, their helmets turned toward the alley. One raised a scanner. A red beam swept across the street, coming dangerously close. Joran pressed Salai down, holding her close against the wall. His breath brushed her ear as he whispered, "If they find us, we'll run. And if we can't run, then I'll fight." Salai's voice trembled. "You will die." "Maybe," Joran said. "But I'd rather die standing than live knowing I walked away." The beam flickered past them and moved on. The collectors stepped further down the street, their heavy boots fading into the distance. Salai exhaled, her shoulders shaking with relief, but her eyes turned to Joran, full of confusion and something else, something fragile. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk yourself for me? You don't even know me." Joran looked at her steadily. "Because I know what it feels like to be unwanted, to have every door shut, to be treated like nothing. But you're not nothing. You never were." For a long time, Salai was silent. The silver lines on her skin dimmed slightly, no longer pulsing so bright. She lowered her head, and her voice came out soft. "You're a fool," she whispered again. Joran chuckled, the sound rough. "Then maybe the world needs more fools. But before either could say more, a new sound filled the air. Not the hum of ships, not the heavy boots of collectors. This sound was sharper, closer, the clatter of weapons being armed. From the mouth of the alley, two mantas, or collectors appeared, blocking their escape. Their red helmets glowed, and their voices thundered. There she is. The debt must be paid. Salai froze. Joran stood in front of her without thinking, his arms spread wide. His voice came out steady, stronger than it had ever been in his life. Then you'll have to take me first. Salai gasped. The collectors tilted their heads, their red lines flickering. For the first time, their voices softened, almost curious. You offer your body in her place? Joran's jaw tightened. He didn't fully understand what he was saying, but his heart knew. Yes, he said, take me instead. Salai's breath caught in her throat. The words she had spoken in despair, whispered into the night, now stood before her in truth. A human stranger, ragged and poor, was ready to give himself for her, and the collectors were listening. The alley froze in silence. Salai's breath caught, her silver-marked skin glowing faintly in the shadows. Joran stood firm, his arms spread wide, blocking her from the armored figures. The collectors tilted their helmets, the red lines across their masks flickering like fire. You dare? One of them said, their voice cold and heavy. Joran's voice cracked but held steady. Yes, take me instead. For a heartbeat, the collectors were still. Then the sound of metal shifting filled the air, their weapons unlocked with a sharp click, glowing with red energy. Unacceptable, the leader said. The promise was made. The debt cannot be changed. She must be taken. The beam of their weapons lit the narrow alley in crimson. Salai gripped Joran's sleeve, fear flooding her eyes. They won't listen, she whispered. We have to run. Joran grabbed her hand. Then run we will. With no time to think, he pulled her through the other end of the alley. Their boots slammed against the stone as the collectors' weapons fired, searing red beams cutting the walls beside them. Sparks rained down. The air burned hot. Faster, Joran shouted. Salai's legs stumbled at first, but desperation gave her strength. She matched his pace, her glowing lines bright against the night. Together they sprinted into the maze of old streets. The collectors followed. Heavy boots struck the ground in perfect rhythm, their metallic steps echoing like drums of war. Their voices carried through the streets, amplified and unyielding. Run if you wish. The debt is eternal. We will not stop. Salai's chest heaved, her breath sharp. You don't understand, Joran. They cannot be outrun. Everything can be outrun, Joran said, his jaw clenched. You just need to know where to run. He dragged her through a side passage, down crumbling stairs into the lower district. The air grew damp, smelling of rust and mold. The tunnels twisted like a labyrinth, a place Joran knew well. He had hidden here many nights when the city turned cruel. Salai stumbled but kept going, trusting him now. For the first time in her life, someone was pulling her forward instead of pushing her away. But the hum of the collector's scanners drew closer. Red light beams swept across the tunnels, painting the walls with searching lines. They're gaining, Salai said, her voice tight. Then we'll make them lose, Joran muttered. He spotted a half-collapsed passage filled with rubble and broken beams. Without hesitation, he shoved Salai through first, then followed, scraping his arms as he crawled. Behind them, the collector's boots pounded closer. A red blast struck the rubble, sending stones crashing down. Dust filled the air. Joran coughed but kept moving, dragging Salai out the other side. They emerged into a wider chamber, one of the old underground markets long abandoned. Broken stalls lay scattered, shadows stretching across the cracked floor. For a moment, silence. Only their ragged breathing filled the air. Then Salai spoke, her voice trembling. Why? Why are you doing this? You don't even know me, Jor showered, and wiped the dust from his face, his eyes hard. I don't need to know you. I just know you don't deserve to be hunted like this. No one does. Her lips parted, but no words came. The sound of boots thundered again, closer this time. The collectors entered the chamber, their glowing helmets scanning the darkness. There is no escape, the leader declared. Surrender and the end will be swift. Joran looked around desperately. There was no clear path forward, no easy exit. His mind raced. He had lived his whole life escaping hunger, escaping violence, escaping the world's cruelty. But this was different. This time, he wasn't running for himself. He spotted a narrow shaft leading upward, broken ladders bolted to the wall. It looked unstable, dangerous, but it was their only chance. Up there, he whispered, pointing. Salai's eyes widened. It'll collapse. Then climb fast, he said. They scrambled toward the shaft as the collectors advanced. Energy blasts struck the ground, sending waves of heat across the chamber. The ladders shook, the bolts screaming as Seelai climbed. Joran followed close behind, his muscles burning. Halfway up, one of the ladders snapped, clanging against the wall. Seelai gasped, her grip slipping. "I can't." "Yes, you can," Joran shouted, pushing her upward. "Don't let go." Her silver lines blazed brighter, and with a final surge, she pulled herself higher. Joran gritted his teeth and followed, even as the metal cut his palms. Below them, the collectors aimed upward. Red blasts struck the shaft walls, showering them with sparks. "Faster!" Joran urged. At last, Seelai reached the top, pulling herself into the open night air. Joran climbed after her, his body aching. They rolled out onto a rooftop, gasping for breath. For a moment, the stars above seemed endless, the sky vast and free. But freedom was an illusion. The collectors were already scaling the shaft below, their glowing helmets rising like predators. Seelai turned to Joran, tears glinting in her alien eyes. "This will never end. They will chase. Me forever. You will die because of me." Joran looked at her, his chest heaving, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "Then let them chase," he said. "Let them try. I've been running my whole life, but for once, I'm running for something that matters." The wind whipped across the rooftop. The city stretched out before them, lights, towers, and shadows. The collectors climbed closer, their weapons glowing red in the dark. Seelai clutched her chest, torn between fear and something new, something she didn't yet understand. She whispered, almost to herself, "Why would a human stand for me, when even my own kind would not?" Joran didn't answer with words. He stood, pulling her to her feet, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Because someone has to," he said. And then the chase began again, across the rooftops, under the stars, with the hunters close behind. The night wind tore across the rooftops as Joran and Seelai ran. Their feet pounded on stone and steel, leaping from one rooftop to another, but the collectors followed without pause. Red beams lit the sky, chasing them like hunting dogs with fire in their jaws. Seelai's breath was ragged, her silver lines glowing brighter with every desperate step. Joran's muscles screamed in pain, but he refused to slow down. He had run from many things in his life, hunger, violence, rejection, but never like this. This was no longer escape. This was defiance. Still, the collectors were closing in. Their heavy boots struck the rooftops in perfect rhythm. Their voices boomed across the city. "Seelai, the debt must be paid." They reached the end of the rooftops. Ahead was a gap too wide to jump. Below lay a dark street, empty and silent, but the drop was deadly. Seelai stopped, panic in her eyes. "We're trapped," she gasped. Joran turned, his chest heaving. The collectors stepped onto the rooftop behind them, their glowing helmets. Like red stars in the night, weapons raised, they advanced slowly, certain of their victory. "There is nowhere left to run," the leader declared. "The promise cannot be broken. Step forward, Seelai, and surrender your body." Seelai's knees buckled. She lowered her head, shame weighing her down. The silver lines across her skin pulsed like a heartbeat. "It's over," she whispered. But Joran stepped in front of her. His body trembled with exhaustion, yet his voice came out strong. "No," he said. "It's not over until I say it is." The collectors froze, their helmets tilted, scanning him. One spoke, its voice colder than ice. "You interfere again, human. Why? This debt does not belong to you." Joran's jaw tightened. "Maybe not. But no one deserves to be hunted like this. No one deserves to live as a prisoner of a promise they never made." The leader's weapon glowed brighter. "It is not your place to decide." "Then make it my place," Joran shot back. He spread his arms wide, just as he had in the alley. "Take me instead. I give myself in her place." Seelai gasped, grabbing his arm. "Joran, no, you don't understand what you're saying." He looked at her, his eyes steady. "I understand enough. You've carried this burden alone since birth. If I can carry it instead, even for a moment, then I will." Her fingers trembled as they clutched him. "They will destroy you." Joran gave a bitter smile. "I've been destroyed before, but maybe this time it will mean something." The collectors fell silent. Their glowing helmets shifted toward one another as if in silent debate. At last, the leader spoke. "You offer your body as substitute." "Yes," Joran said. His voice did not waver. "Take me and leave her free." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the leader lowered his weapon slightly. "Interesting," the collector said. "Few would dare to bargain with us. Fewer still would offer themselves. Tell us, human, do you understand what this means?" Joran's chest heaved, but his eyes did not leave theirs. "I understand enough. You want a body. You can hook. Of mine. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with tension. Selai's heart pounded in her ears. She wanted to scream to stop him, but her voice would not come. At last, the collector's leader took a step forward. The rooftop shook under its armored weight. Its red light glowed brighter as it loomed over Joran. If this bargain is made, it cannot be undone, the collector said. Once given, the body cannot be returned. Do you still accept? Joran's voice was steady, even as fear clawed at his gut. Yes. Salai could bear it no longer. She stepped forward, her voice breaking. Stop, please, you don't understand. The promise was never about the flesh alone. It was about ownership, service, chains that bind forever. If you take him, he will never be free again. He will not live. He will not die. He will belong to you. The collectors turned their helmets toward her, but Joran did not move. His eyes stayed locked on her face. Then so be it, he said softly. Better me than you. Her tears finally fell, shining like silver in the night. Why? Why would you do this for me? Joran's smile was small, tired, but real. Because someone has to. Because every door shut on you, and I won't be another door. The collectors raised their weapons. Red light washed over Joran, painting his face in fire. Salai clutched his arm, shaking her head in desperation. No, not you, not like this. The leader's voice boomed. The bargain is heard. The body is offered. The debt may yet be satisfied. But then, to Salai's shock, the collector lowered its weapon. Its red glow dimmed, and its voice grew almost thoughtful. Strange. No human has ever stood before us so boldly. No human has offered themselves without fear. It leaned closer, its mask inches from Joran's face. Perhaps there is value in this bargain. Salai's breath caught. Joran did not flinch. Then take me, he repeated. The collector straightened. Very well. We accept your offer. The air trembled as the collectors raised their arms in unison. Strange symbols glowed in the air. Red light weaving patterns around Joran's body. His chest tightened. His skin burned as if fire licked his flesh. Salai cried out, trying to pull him back, but the light held him fast. And in that moment, Joran felt his life no longer his own. The collectors spoke as one, their voices echoing like thunder. The bargain is sealed. The debt is paid. Salai fell to her knees, her heart breaking. Joran stood within the circle of red light, his body shaking, but his eyes still fixed on her. And for the first time in her life, Salai saw something she had never known. Someone who chose her, not out of fear, not out of duty, but out of choice. A human who dared to bargain with monsters. The rooftop glowed with crimson light. Strange symbols spun in the air, wrapping around Joran's body like chains of fire. His teeth clenched against the burning pain, but he did not move. His arms stayed spread, his eyes locked on Salai. Salai clawed at the glowing lines, desperate to pull them away. Stop, please, stop. He doesn't belong to you. The collectors did not answer at first. Their voices were silent, their helmets flickering with shifting light as though they were studying him. Then the leader spoke. Curious, it said, voice deep and heavy. The body is offered, yet the bond resists. Why does it resist? The other collectors tilted their heads, their red lines pulsing. Salai's eyes widened. She looked at Joran, then back at the armored figures. It's because he doesn't belong to you, she whispered. Not yet. He offered freely. That changes everything. The leader stepped closer. Its towering frame blocked the starlight. Explain. Salai's voice shook, but strength filled it. The debt was made in chains. I was promised before I ever lived. I was not given a choice. That is why the bond holds me so tightly. But Joran. She looked at him, her tears shining like silver. He gave himself freely. You cannot chain someone who offers themselves without fear. The bond doesn't know how to hold him. The collectors were silent. The rooftop wind howled between them, carrying the weight of her words. At last, the leader's red light dimmed slightly. There is truth in what you say. The burning chains around Joran faded, leaving him gasping for breath. His knees almost buckled, but Salai caught him, her hands gripping his shoulders tightly. You fool, she whispered, but her voice broke with relief. Joran gave a faint grin. Still standing. Told you I'd try. She shook her head, her silver lines glowing faintly. You don't understand what you've done. They don't want just flesh. The word body, it never meant skin and bone alone. He frowned. Then what does it mean? Salai's voice lowered to a whisper. It means service, obedience. It means giving your will, your spirit to their command. To say, take my body, is to say, I am yours to control. Joran's heart thudded. He looked at the collectors, then back at her. So when you whispered those words, Salai nodded slowly, shame in her eyes. I wasn't offering my life. I was offering my freedom, my soul. That was the promise made before my birth. The collector's leader straightened. Its voice rolled across the rooftop like thunder. Yes, the debt is not of flesh but of loyalty. The body is the vessel of service. To claim the body is to claim the soul. Joran's chest tightened. So if I had gone through with it, you would have lived, the leader said, but not as yourself. You would have been ours forever. Salai gripped his arm harder, her voice trembling. Do you see now why I told you not to offer yourself? Once taken, you would never have been free again. Joran swallowed hard. For a moment, fear chilled his blood. But then he looked at her, the girl who had been hunted, rejected and abandoned by everyone. And he smiled faintly. I'd still do it. Better me than you. Salai's breath caught. Her chest ached, not from fear but from something. Deeper, something she had never known. The collectors tilted their helmets, studying him in silence. Then the leader spoke again, its tone different now. Less of a threat, more of a test. You offer service, yet you do not fear. You step forward, yet you are not chained. Why? Joran met its red gaze without flinching. Because I chose it. I wasn't forced, and maybe that's what makes me stronger than your debt. Choice. The collectors fell silent. Their lights pulsed faintly, like thought. For the first time, Salai saw hesitation in them. Finally, the leader spoke. Perhaps there is more to this human than we expected. It turned to Salai. Your debt was written in chains, but this one offers himself in freedom. Such a gift cannot be measured by our law. Salai's heart raced. Does that mean? The collector nodded once. It means the bargain is not broken. It is transformed. The air shifted. The red symbols vanished, leaving only the cold wind and the distant hum of the city. The collectors lowered their weapons. The debt on you, Salai, is erased, the leader declared. The one who chose freely has changed its meaning. No longer will your family's chains bind you. The promise has been answered by something greater. Salai's knees buckled. She stared at Joran, disbelief flooding her face. You freed me. Joran blinked, confused. Me? I didn't do anything. You did everything, she whispered. You gave them what they could never take, choice. That is why they cannot hold me anymore. The collectors stepped back. Their red lights dimmed, almost fading into the night. Before they vanished, the leader's voice echoed one last time. Human, remember this. Service given in chains is weakness. Service given in choice is strength beyond measure. You have taught us this truth. And then, like shadows dissolving in the dark, they were gone. Silence fell. The rooftop felt suddenly vast, the city lights stretching endlessly below. Salai turned to Joran, tears slipping down her cheeks. You don't understand, do you? You gave me back my life. For the first time, I am free. Joran scratched the back of his neck, weary and awkward. I don't know about all that. I just didn't want to see you taken. She laughed softly, a sound half broken, half joyful. You call yourself a fool, but tonight you were wiser than all my people. Joran looked out over the city, the weight of exhaustion heavy on his shoulders. Maybe I just opened the right door when everyone else kept it shut. Above them, the stars burned brighter, free and unchained, and for the first time, so did Salai. The rooftop was silent after the collectors vanished. The crimson glow had faded, leaving only the night sky above. Stars shimmered like diamonds scattered across endless black, as if the universe itself had paused to witness what had happened. Salai stood still, her silver-marked skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. She touched her arms, her chest, her face, as if testing to see if she was real. For the first time in her life, there were no chains on her spirit. I am free, she whispered. The words trembled from her lips, fragile and new, like a child's first breath. Joran leaned against the rooftop wall, his chest still heaving. Sweat ran down his face, dust covered his clothes, and his body ached with exhaustion. But despite the pain, a small smile curved his lips. You're free, he repeated softly, almost in disbelief. Salai turned to him, tears shining in her alien eyes. Because of you. Joran shook his head. Because you deserved it. I just stood in the way until they saw it. But Salai stepped closer, her voice stronger now. No one ever stood in the way. Not for me, not once, until you. For a moment, silence stretched between, and them, heavy with things neither knew how to say. Salai finally spoke, her voice soft. Do you know what it means? To live your whole life with every door shut, every hand turned away, to carry a curse that isn't even yours? Joran's eyes lowered. I know what it's like to be unwanted, to have nothing, to be invisible, maybe not the same as you, but enough to understand a piece of it. Salai's silver lines pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. She stepped even closer. Then maybe that's why you saw me, when no one else did. The wind swept across the rooftop, carrying the scents of the city, smoke, metal, bread from the markets, dust from old streets. It was the same city where Salai had been rejected again and again, but tonight, standing beside Joran, it no longer felt like a prison. It felt like the beginning of something new. Far below, the city stirred, lights flickered in windows, doors opened cautiously, whispers spread. People had seen the red glow in the sky, heard the voices of the collectors echo through the streets. Some had even witnessed Joran standing between them and Salai. Now, faces appeared at the edges of alleys, at windows and balconies, eyes wide, filled with curiosity and something more. For the first time, they were not looking at Salai with fear. They were looking with wonder. Salai noticed. Her heart pounded. They're watching us, she whispered. Joran gave a weary grin. Let them. Maybe they'll finally see what I saw. Salai's throat tightened. And what is that? That you're not a debt, Joran said simply. You're not a curse. You're a person, someone worth standing for. Her lips parted, but no words came. Only tears, shining silver, sliding down her cheeks. The people below began to murmur. Some pointed, others whispered in awe. A child's voice carried up through the night air. Is she free? Salai's chest rose and fell as she looked down at them. For the first time, she did not shrink back. She stood tall, her silver lines glowing bright and proud. Yes, she whispered to herself, I am free. And the people, though they could not hear her, seemed to understand. Joran pushed himself off the wall, staggering slightly. Salai caught him before he could fall. You're hurt, she said quickly. I've been worse, Joran muttered with a grin, though his legs shook beneath him. But I'm still standing, that's what matters. Salai studied him, her voice soft but certain. You gave everything, Joran. No one has ever done that for me. You changed everything. He looked into her glowing eyes, his voice low. Maybe, but the truth is, you changed me too. I was just a man surviving, waiting for nothing. But now, I feel like I finally lived for something. Salai's breath caught. For a long moment, they stood in silence. Two souls who had both been unwanted, both broken in different ways, now standing together under the endless stars. At last, Salai whispered, Then let's live. Not as chains, not as bargains, but as ourselves. Together. Joran blinked, his chest tightening. Then slowly, he nodded. Together. Below, the whispers of the crowd grew louder. The sight of Salai standing unafraid, with a human at her side, began to spread like fire through the city. The story would grow. It would be told in markets, whispered in alleys, sung in quiet rooms. The girl who had been rejected, cursed, unwanted, set free not by power, not by wealth, but by the courage of a single human who stood when no one else would. It was a story the city would never forget. Salai turned to Joran, her silver lines glowing brighter than ever, no longer marks of shame, but symbols of strength. Every door shut in my face, she said softly, until you opened one. Joran smiled, tired but proud. Then let's keep it open. Together they walked from the rooftop down into the city that once turned its back on her, but now, with every step, the doors no longer closed. For the first time, they opened. And for the first time, Salai stepped through, not as a prisoner, not as a debt, but as herself, free,